you're allowed to do whatever it is that lights you up, and some of it might work and some of it might not. But the worst place to be is sitting there looking around at all of the things that you thought you could have done that you never did because you were too afraid to do them. So I kind of do feel like just go for it.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. We have another incredible episode for you today. We have Angela Scanlon on with Lacy. Angela, if you haven't heard of her yet, you are going to fall in love. She is a TV and radio presenter, an author, a podcast host. She has her own jewelry company named FRKL, and her debut book, Joyrider, How Gratitude Can Help You Get the Life You Really Want, just launched last week. They have such a fun convo. It literally feels like you're sitting as a fly on the wall of two best friends hanging out and catching up and talking about the meaningful things in life. You guys are going to get so much out of it. They talk about dependence, motherhood, changes, the different emotions that come up while parenting and balancing their roles at work and at home, and finding time for themselves and practice to really leaning into the intimacy that comes with building a family. Angela has some great tips on gratitude and carving out time within your day, even if it's just 10 minutes. I know you guys are going to fall in love with her and enjoy the episode. Before we jump in, one other note I wanted to make. I was noticing, at least for myself, and I know we have a lot of astrology things going on right now. I'm learning about all of them with the big super blood full moon that we had last week, the eclipse. There's a lot of astrological things in the air, but I've also noticed a pattern between myself, friends, my Instagram community, connecting with you guys and hearing back, and connecting with the TBM community. How I'm kind of contextualizing is we're being made to look at our shadow parts, the parts of us that are not yet fully integrated, whether it's a core wound or an aspect of ourselves. And it's confronting in a way where the uncertainty of life ahead feels confusing. So whether that's you're hitting a rock bottom, there's a career change, there's financial instability, relationship instability, home instability, something feels very confronting, tense. We're almost in this like breakdown to break through sort of energy. And I just wanted to voice this on here. I got the ping to share on the podcast about this because it's so important that you guys realize you're not alone when you're going through these really tough things. Oftentimes when it's such a powerful moment, other people might be going through very similar things at the same time. And just knowing that fact can be so helpful. So I highly encourage you guys to reach out to your communities, to the TBM communities, check in Mighty Networks, message people on Instagram. If you need help or support, let people know what you're going through. And if you are facing that rock bottom energy, a lot of you wrote into me that you were, the Rock Bottom Workshop is so perfect for that, or the Answers and Clarity DI, to really get a semblance of like, how do I navigate and what does this next version of me look like? I know I'm coming up on a lot of that energy right now. One other thing I want to mention, which is really, really exciting and obviously seems like the perfect timing because that always happens with our launches, but we have an incredible DI project that is coming out that we worked with Janelle Nelson on, the EMDR and licensed marriage and family therapist, and Dr. Tara Swart, which was so lovely getting to work with Tara again, and really took these new DIs to the next level. We're going to launch them with a challenge, and we're really having you guys navigate one major core wound. So if you are facing that breaking point, that shift, that sort of breakdown to breakthrough energy, what core wound is it touching on? Start to notice some of that. And as we get closer to the challenge, you can really think about how you might be able to take that through with all of the updates and new releases we have coming in June. So without further ado, here is the episode.
And now a word from our partners.
As you guys know, we are huge fans of Blue Blocks here. So excited of how many products and how they've grown over the years. They were our very first podcast sponsor on Expanded, and it's been really cool to see how many new offerings and things that they have rolled out since the very beginning. But I kind of wanted to go back to the very first item that made me fall in love with their company, and that is their blue light blocking glasses. So I've been noticing that I've been spending so much time on my screen lately, especially late at night. That's where my creativity chimes in. I'm able to really get some concentrated time working, whether it's on a podcast brief or working through a next edition of a deep imagining script. Whatever it is, I get that creative burst at night, which means I'm looking at my screen. And even though I have Flux on, it's constant blue light in my face, which does not wire you for sleep. And one of my friends was asking any tips I had because she was having a lot of difficulty sleeping. She's a video editor, and the last thing she does before night is video edit on her computer with no blue light blocking glasses and then goes to bed. I'm like, oh, when you look at that blue light, it is telling your brain that it is noon and it doesn't need to release any melatonin to prime you for sleep. And so that is why it's so important that if you are a night owl or someone that tends to look at your screen late, that you are protecting yourself from that blue light because it can impact your sleep so significantly. So the glasses that I would recommend, specifically ones that are for right before nighttime, are the nighttime blue light blocking glasses. They have the red lens and they're blocking 100% of blue light. So if you're looking at your smartphone, your computer screen, anything that you're doing, you will be covered from the blue light and it will let your melatonin and your body return to the normal clock that is supposed to be and be on a better circadian rhythm. I have both the Crystal style pair and the Zane pair. Love both of them. Daniel and I kind of trade off which ones we're going to wear before bed. And it was so funny. I had that friend who had the computer editing thing before bed have a sleepover at the same time that my sister was also in town. And I knew I was in the right company because at 10 o'clock, everyone pulled out their red blue light blocking glasses. And I was like, guys, I love that we all care about our sleep so much. It was such a cool moment. So if you guys are looking for another piece to really help you wind down before bed in a very relaxing way, protect you against the blue light from your screens if you need to be on them before bedtime, I highly, highly recommend it. Blue Box is the most science-backed blue light blocking glasses on the market. They really, really work. And if you use the code all caps magnetic, MAGNETIC, you'll receive 15% off your entire order. You can check it out at the link in our show notes or blueblocks.com/pages/magnetic. One thing I am a huge fan of is protecting and helping to heal my gut. As someone who has had many gut imbalances in her life, having a really healthy gut really is the start of health for me because it is what sets everything else into balance. And so when it comes to my probiotics, I want to get the best in the business in order to support my gut at the maximum capacity. So I've looked no further than seed probiotics. We've been talking about them for such a long time because they really are top of the industry. They have the most science-backed research, the 2-in-1 capsule to make sure 100% of what you are taking in the probiotics actually reaches the gut compared to a lot of other probiotics where it gets broken down in the stomach acid and bile and never actually reaches the part of the gut or colon that it needs to go in order to support you. And one thing that I had been thinking about recently was this idea of rotating probiotics, getting different strains of probiotics at different times. Different companies have this idea and schedule. And Seed actually had a great share on their Instagram about this that helped break down why it was important to take your probiotics regularly. Probiotics are transient, meaning they go into the digestive tract and the colon and support that area. So they're interacting with your gut cells, your immune cells, your dietary nutrients, and all of the microbiota that is already in your digestive tract to help support all of them further. After they've done their job, they colonize that area and then they leave your system when they travel through your intestines and out of your body. So that means if you're rotating probiotics, you're not giving all of the strains that you try in that first batch its fair share because you need to continually take it. It's something you want to take on a regular basis. They're not permanently going to live in your system. So they're constantly moving in and out of your body. So the more regularly you take probiotics, the more effective they're going to be for your body. That's why I stick with Seed. I'm regular about taking it. And I did notice it was interesting when I went home over the holidays, I had left my jar of Seed at home and I was so disappointed in trying to get one on the go because even after not taking it for 4 or 5 days, I can tell my digestion immediately shifted and felt different because it wasn't getting that support from the Seed probiotic that I needed. And once I was back on, I was feeling incredible, far less bloated, ease of digestion, and everything was running a lot smoother. So if you're looking for a good probiotic, you're looking to boost your immune and overall health through supporting the gut microbiome, I highly suggest checking out Seed. We have a special code for our podcast community, TBM15, for 15% off your first month subscription with Seed. I promise you, you will not regret it. It is one of the best monthly subscriptions I have by far. Again, that code is TBM15 for 15% off, and you can check out the show notes for a link to the Seed website to purchase or on our podcast essentials page as well.
All right, on to the episode. How are you doing? It's such an honor to have you here. I just love following you on Instagram.
I'm exactly the same. And honestly, I've obviously been doing some podcasts for promotion of the book, but this is the one. Don't tell anyone else.
Yay!
Don't tell anyone else.
So
I'm really not great at listening to podcasts. No, I do listen to them, but this is the only one I subscribe to. And like religiously every Friday it drops. I'm like, boom, ready for the weekend. I am genuinely, and for years, and I love your work. I love how accessible you've made this whole world. And I'm very, very happy to be here. So thanks for having me. Like I said, I'm trying not to be creepy, nerdy fan.
Well, it's the greatest compliment because I see every once in a while you're a big fan of manifestation in general.
I am.
So it's a great honor and compliment. I'm so grateful.
You're also quoted in the book, Lacy.
Wow. I need to go out and get a copy. So I am like you. I'm dreadful at listening to podcasts because of my attention span. Also, I'm dreadful at reading any type of book. I only listen to audio. And even more nerdy am I really look at books for their cover. And your cover is so beautiful that I'm like, I have to read this book. It's so cool.
I mean, you can just get the book, look at the cover, and then download me in your ears because I did do the audiobook. And it was honestly so much fun. It was really lovely to do.
How in God's name did you accomplish all of this? Meanwhile, I know you had like a show going on the last year. You just had a baby. Like, are you just a super generator? I mean, we'll get into your chart, but how do you have all of this energy?
I do have hideous amounts of energy, although I find that a lot of the time that is channeled into my work specifically. It's a little problematic. And then I come home like a shell. So it's definitely something I've had to work on. I love my work. I feel really fortunate that I get to do lots of different things. I bore very easily. And I've tried to kind of, for a long time, stay in one lane. And I just felt like very restricted in that. And now I'm just embracing lots of different things. And yeah, so it takes a little bit of management. And as you know, I've recently had a baby. It seems like everything's happening all at once, but the timelines have been a little more gentle than they appear online.
Because I'm like, you have a 4-year-old to what I can make out.
Yeah.
You have a brand new like when I had Teddy, I think I'm still just getting my shit together. I'm like, how is this is incredible.
No, Lacy, in fairness. And actually, it was a catalyst for a lot of things, having my daughter, and she is 4. I found it incredibly difficult. So even watching you online, like it feels to me like you were aware of yourself enough to know what you needed, to have support systems in place, to give yourself what you need. That's a relatively new thing for me. And when my first daughter, Ruby, arrived, it was obviously having a child is life-changing for everybody. But for me, I had just kind of built this sense of being completely self-sufficient and without need and without limits. And then suddenly I was faced with all of that in the form of a tiny human. And I kind of pride myself of being very good at things, very competitive. And I really didn't feel like I was very good at motherhood in those early days. And so it kind of pushed me into changing a lot of things in my life for the better. But it certainly took me a long time to get back to what felt like a normal state.
Well, it's so interesting because you shared not long ago, I remember seeing you, speak really openly how you had a hard time with that first postpartum period. And I don't want to paraphrase, but I remember taking from it that you were really vulnerable, saying like how some moms have that instant connection and everything comes to them so easily. You really struggled with that the first time around.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of didn't say that openly in the beginning because I was probably quite embarrassed. I was a bit afraid. I was like, shit, am I always going to feel like this? And this feels unfair to everybody involved. But for me, motherhood was definitely something I grew into. And it did take me a really long time. I was unsure of myself. And truthfully, and this is with hindsight, I think a lot of the difficulty for me was the wild vulnerability. You're literally cracked open by this tiny little human and their dependency on you and their need of you and the kind of overwhelming feelings, positive a lot of the time, as well as the sudden lack of freedom and the suffocation and all of the other things that can feel less positive. But I think for me, the big feelings felt really, really hard to hold, So all of it was just like, I think I kind of fled back to work. That felt like a much safer thing. And then I thought that was the problem. Oh, I went back to work too early, but actually work at the time was a safe space for me, whereas the intimacy of a brand new baby and all of the vulnerability of that moment of like brand new postpartum was really like difficult to bear for me.
Where does that come from? Look, now we're just going to throw down like super friends.
We're going straight in.
Because I feel, it's interesting. I can resonate on so many levels with what you just said, even as I'm preparing my body for the next pregnant, like I'm going to be 38. So I'm like, well, if I want more than 2, which I'm at this point, like, do I just want 1?
Do you want more than 2?
Well, I've always thought that I did, but I think that because I had the support systems in place, I maybe had a little bit of a smoother landing. But when I look at 0 to 1 this last year, all I feel is trauma. I have to work through a lot. It's like finding myself hormonally after and who I am and like, who am I in relation to my work, also to my relationship. It's just so turny, topsy, however you say that. And because of everything I know about inner child and shadow work, I really showed up for Teddy. I had to do that. But had I have not had that knowledge, everything that you're saying resonates. I would have just like run for work.
Run for the hills.
It would have been really safe. So I'm curious, I guess it's a twofold question. Where does that come from in you? Because I feel like I can relate. I feel very similar. And then B, I want to hear more about how you even prepared emotionally for this next experience, round 2. In fact, I can read energetically into what you're saying, you know, where it's like, I don't know if this resonates, but I do a lot of the things with my partner where it's like, I'm my own person, I can take care of myself. And I don't know if that's your case, but I know that has always been my safe space.
I mean, that is literally it. Somebody asked me earlier on, what did you, as a kid, did you have an idea about what you wanted to do or be when you grew up? I just remember having this very clear line. I want to be a businesswoman in a turquoise convertible with my hair blown in the wind.
Which would look so beautiful with your red hair. I get it.
I mean, glam bitch. I know.
I'm here for it.
But I remember, as my therapist pointed out, she was like, that vision, you're in the car on your own. And I was on a solo run. I think I kind of prided myself on being really independent and really self-sufficient, and financially, emotionally, I had it all sorted. I don't need anybody. And suddenly I had Ruby, and I mean, breastfeeding was really difficult for me. The birth was really quick. So on paper, it was really textbook. It was a good birth, but it was so traumatic for me. The speed with which everything happened, I don't think I was prepared at all. I was slightly in denial about the fact that I was having a baby. You know, I worked right up till the end. So there was no kind of come down or like easing into that period. So I literally went from 100 to like stopping still. And yeah, I just found that sudden I needed my husband a lot, more than he needed me. And suddenly I was like, oh, this feels like really uncomfortable for me. You know, I remember having mastitis and waking in the middle of the night and being like, I think I'm going to die. I had this wild fever. And he got up in the middle of the night and was making smoothies for me. And I got so deeply in touch, not with the dependency of this new baby on me and that kind of like mad love, but also my dependency on my husband. And I go suddenly from, dependency is like it's proof of trust and love and shared experience. To me, I'm like, oh my God, I'm dependent. What if he dies?
Completely.
Straight away.
Yeah.
And so I detach before I ever get to the point where I might lose somebody and be like hurt by that loss. And that's something that I still have to work really hard to kind of stay with and, lean into all of the good stuff rather than leaning out for fear that it will disappear.
Yeah, that's my big piece, is the rug will get pulled out from under me.
Yeah.
And I think everything you're surmising is so beautiful because little kids, little babies, they need us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting how they are the invitation to need others. And in my true honesty, I talk about this a lot with my partner. As someone who needs so much alone time, so much rest, and I'm such a codependent that wants to make sure everybody else feels comfortable before I do, that having the level of support that I had on the other side, which most people would look at, and it is the ultimate privilege, they'd be like, well, God, what a godsend. But for me, it was actually so overwhelming to have that amount of people around and me having to rely on them. Not only like the hardship of having to finally tell my partner, like, I need you for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's just something that I think is such an important dialogue for other people to resonate with and feel that it was so hard. It still is hard.
It's hard. It's so hard, but it's also really rewarding. And I think, you've spoken really honestly about like the challenges of having those people around you. But I also think you've given real permission to people to actually recognize that if they are in a position where they can afford that level of support, that that's okay. And I think for so long, and I don't know whether this is as an Irish woman, but, you know, the kind of mother is very much the martyr figure, and it's like a sacrifice of the self. Everything goes. As soon as you become a mother, everything that you did before then is kind of irrelevant almost. And I was like, that is definitely not going to happen. And I mean this as a historical thing, not necessarily now, but it's still kind of in the ether. And I think that idea of, you know, even now childcare, I kind of sometimes say it with a whisper.
Same.
You know, that we have a nanny. I'm like, oh my God.
I say co-care and stuff, all of these words, because I'm like, this is taboo. It's bad.
Yeah. And it feels like things that, you know, fancy people have or lazy people have or people who don't really love children. Why would you have a child and let someone else look after it? And there's all of these kind of lines that circulate around. But this time round, that piece, that need thing has become such a massive, and like it's obviously very tied to self-worth. And, you know, your work has kind of brought me to that place. To give yourself what you need is such an act of self-love, you know, whatever about the petal baths and all of the lovely self-care things, but to actually recognize what you need and give it to yourself, it's such a gift. And so to your question about, you know, second time round off the back of a pretty, you know, rocky first baby experience, I had things in place. I was like, I'm leaning in to all of the help, you know, and I had food, and I had like an amazing doula called Romy, and she would come and like sometimes rub my feet, and I'd be like, this is absolutely wild. I'm so embarrassed. But I was like, no, I'm forcing myself. I'm forcing myself to be in this. And I stayed in the room for like 3 weeks, pretty much. I tried to do that whole honoring that period postpartum, which I absolutely hadn't done. Just caring for myself and resting and like that little bubble and understanding, you know, and bonding with my baby without all of those interruptions. And again, I'm acutely aware that that's a wild privilege. And my husband, much like I sense Max is the same, like extremely hands-on. And also I think, you know, he knew how difficult it had been for me first time round. So I think there was anxiety on both our parts going, is it going to be the same, but double, because we now have a 4-year-old who's going to have all of her own, you know, feelings around a new addition to the house, the dynamic changes. And am I going to go straight back into that, you know, very detached mode and then back to work, flight?
And how did it go?
You know what? I had a home birth, Lacy, and it was amazing.
Fantastic.
And I really, really wanted to do that. And lots of people were kind of very alarmed.
Well, the UK, it's still pretty, like here, it's real, especially Los Angeles, of course. It's very like accepted. But from my friends in the UK, it sounds like it's still tricky.
It's pretty niche. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the responses I got from people were, oh my God, you're so brave. I was like, please stop calling me. Please stop calling me brave. Or, you know, oh my God, you're a hippie. I was like, I mean, I am a closet hippie, but like, is this the thing that has alerted you to the fact? But I just kind of felt like kind of creating that like beautiful space where you can be together, where Roy was there. We had the fire lighting, we had candles lit, I had my own music.
Oh.
Yeah, so she was born in the water at the exact same time as Ruby was born, 3:29.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
Wow. Yeah. And so what are their little signs?
So Ruby is Pisces, 25th of Feb.
And Aquarius, right?
Mm-hmm. And Aquarius, yeah, 11th of Feb. Yeah, so within a couple of weeks of each other.
Sorry, I digress.
No, don't worry.
What are you? Yeah, what are you?
I'm Capricorn, and then Roy is Cancerian. So, okay, now I know rising signs, but I literally don't really know what they mean. So I'm like Sun in Capricorn, rising in Leo, which is obviously how I present, right?
Makes all of the world of sense.
It does.
From eyebrows to your career.
Yeah, exactly. And then, Gemini, moon in Gemini.
Fantastic. That all makes a lot of sense to me.
Does it? Okay, good.
I knew people were sitting here wondering, so I'm glad we got that out of the way. But continue.
So basically, what I had felt off the back of my birth experience with Ruby, and it was midwife-led, but it was in hospital. And weirdly, I only realised years later that throughout the whole of my labour with her, I didn't really speak. I kind of shut down. Even when I was having contractions or surges or whatever you want to call them, I was literally silencing myself. And
Wow.
yeah, and I kind of thought, after she was born, I describe it as feeling quite shell-shocked in the direct aftermath of having her. But when I started to look back in preparation for my second birth, I was like, I literally didn't say anything for the entire labor. And so when I was preparing for the second time, I was like, I felt really, really disempowered. I felt like a child. I felt like I was doing what I was told. I wanted to be a good girl, but I wasn't really listening to myself. So I kind of was really adamant that this time round, I wanted it to feel like a very empowered kind of experience and to slightly rewrite my history with Ruby's birth. And so I had those conversations with both of the midwives. So when they came, they didn't say anything. We had the pool. They rubbed me and they guided me and they suggested a couple of positions here and there. But there was no talk of how far dilated. They never did an exam. It was just like, you do you. And at one point I was like, oh my God, this feels very like the moment where I think my kind of panic set in with Ruby. And they said, it's cool. It's fine. You're in complete control here. And so I just kind of took a beat and was like, I can kind of slow everything down here. And then Ruby popped in. She woke up and I was like, oh, Jesus, no. I thought, oh, God, if she comes in and starts panicking at me, wailing in a pool that she thought was her paddling pool 5 hours ago. This is not going to be good. Roy's going to have to leave right when I'm biting his hand. And I thought, this is going to be a disaster. And so she came in and it's so amazing. She just looked at me and rubbed my hand and then rubbed my face and kind of really held me in that moment. I was like, this is nuts. And so I kind of got myself together and then she was born.
Wow. Isn't it crazy the level of intuition that little people have? It's crazy.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I was like, I don't know if it'll be traumatic for her. And then I thought, actually, she was part of it all. Instead of what we kind of thought, she's going to wake up in the morning. We went for dinner last night. She's going to wake up tomorrow and her whole world has changed. So she suddenly became part of that. And she was eating marshmallows and it felt like Christmas for her, and we were all up late and she then came over to me. So the midwives were behind me with a mirror, just to see what's going on. And I don't know if this is too much detail, Lacy. So
you can go for it. I'm here for it.
So they had a mirror, which I had rented along with the pool. And it was one of those mirrors that I kind of envisaged they use, police or security people use to check for drugs underneath the car, the ones with so they had one of those to get a good view. And she came over to me afterwards. I was on the couch and she was like, Mom. And I said, yeah. And she was like, were you shouting because that lady was putting a shovel up your bum? Yes, honey, that's exactly. I was like, what is she talking about? And then I realized, oh yeah, the mirror may have looked a little shovel-like in the dusty light.
So cute.
Yeah.
And so, because you had posted this on Instagram, and in fact, I saved it because I was like, I'm going to need this if and when we conceive this next baby. And you shouted out, you were like, basically for Ruby's sake, how do I ease her into being a sibling? And people had such amazing suggestions on it. And what ended up really working besides her coming in and basically being your doula?
She was my baby doula. So people had amazing responses around giving little gifts, making sure that when the baby was introduced to her, that we went out together and came in to meet the baby together instead of, her coming in to find me with new baby in arms and her feeling displaced or whatever. But I think at one point there was a run to my wardrobe to unearth a fairy door as a gift. So she got a little fairy door from her baby sister and she was quite happy with that and marshmallows and being part of it. So she was able, when we were talking about it with friends afterwards. She was part of it, as opposed to us having this whole story that she wasn't, part of, which is obviously not going to be the experience for very many people. But yeah, on Instagram, endless, brilliant, and really thoughtful kind of ideas. I mean, she definitely wanted to be part of the naming, but she had Rosy White. Very specific. Rosy White. I was like, oh babe, no, we're not doing Ruby and Rosie. It's not happening. So
good.
But I guess just being part of it, I suppose. And then Roy being super hands-on in the aftermath. So when I was with Marnie and bonding and feeding and kind of consumed that there was lots of distraction and one-on-one time. And
great.
So, I mean, look, who knows whether we get it right.
Yes, I know. I mean, only therapy in the future will tell for Ruby, but it sounds like it was a really smooth transition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry, everyone. I've taken half of this episode so far for you to serve as my expander for this next phase. One other thing that I wanted to have a conversation about, because I've only visited Ireland once, and clearly at this point, everybody can tell that you're Irish. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and your upbringing.
So I am from Meath, which is like next county over to Dublin, which is the capital. But my parents are from the west of Ireland. And I don't know why I always kind of lead with that. So my dad is from Mayo, my mum is from Galway. And I probably relate to that side of the country. My dad kind of called us as kids, we were quite free range, So I think there was a slight wildness to that side of the country. So I grew up with 3 sisters, all in quite close proximity, like age-wise, we were like 6 down. It was kind of a nuts house, I think. It was busy. My dad was in that traditional role of being the provider financially. He was one of 14.
Wow.
And then my mum was one of 3. And she took on the role of full-time mum and then worked alongside my dad in his business as that grew. So he worked in building initially and then property development, and she kind of helped alongside him. So it was always kind of, there was a lot going on, and there was a real kind of sense of independence, I suppose, that was fostered, and working for yourself. And so, in terms of that side of things that was expanded, I always kind of thought, I'll definitely work for myself. I knew what that looked like. It was a busy house, and I think maybe because we were 4 girls, it always felt quite competitive. And I think that's only in hindsight. I don't think I necessarily realized that at the time, but I think you're kind of trying to clearly mark out an identity from early on to kind of define yourself and distinguish yourself from your sisters.
It's fascinating because when I visited Ireland, it felt very much like home. I mean, Scotland, as many people know and
I keep sending you properties in Scotland.
I know, the most beautiful place. I mean, my hang up on that is I'm always looking for a completely untouched farmhouse, and it's been impossible to find. So here's what I'm getting at. In Ireland, when I was there, I found that it is so what people say about the Irish, like the most warm, loving, kind people. And the place that really struck me the most is we stayed kind of near Cork, West Ireland. We stayed in a lighthouse, an old lighthouse that was so beautiful. And that was an amazing story because the woman, who was one of the first female lighthouse keepers, had 17 children there that she raised. But everybody around was so loving, so warm, like, oh, my friend so-and-so, come to our house for dinner, like just the warmest people. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, like your culture, your background, because I love it.
Irish people are, they talk about it being the land of the saints and the scholars. I think Irish people are deeply, deeply sensitive souls, and not necessarily always equipped with the language or the country or maybe we were in survival mode. And so that sensitivity wasn't really, there was no space for that. But it's also our brand is that we're fun loving and we'll always bring the party, and there's a real lightness to us. And I think there's a charm and a warmth, as you say, in what you experienced when you visited. And I think that's absolutely true. Like, I think Irish people are some of the most complex in the entire world. Because
Wow.
it's only now we're starting to really find the language. We're really good at language in terms of poetry and writing. But actually finding the language to figure out what's going on in your head, that's pretty new, I think. And maybe it's new for everybody, but for Irish people to talk about therapy is like, are you fucking having a little...
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the other thing, how connected do you feel, for instance, to the roots, like paganism and Gaelic culture?
So Meath, where I'm from, is like really close to Newgrange. It's really close to the Hill of Tara, which would have been like where the kings lived for a while. But I grew up Catholic. Everyone grew up Catholic. You couldn't really escape that. And I write about this in the book, the kind of idea that even if those beliefs or the way things have been carried out in that institution as time went on, and, I became an adult, I was able to make my own decisions about whether I wanted to opt in or opt out of that. But it's also in your bones. The kind of Catholic guilt is very much there, and it's quite hard. A lot of people of my generation certainly are, it doesn't resonate with them anymore. And there's like Repeal the 8, and there's loads of scandals, deep, harrowing stuff that has happened in Ireland in the last, 50 years that are as a direct result of the Catholic Church. And so a lot of my generation are just, it's not the one. But what that does mean is that because we didn't learn about paganism as something to kind of connect with, we're all trying to find those things that resonate, I suppose. So it's relatively new for me to start looking into that. I mean, there's like Kylox I was introduced to, which is like a really wise old Irish woman. And I've kind of done some like journeying where I've met these women who are, my guides and stuff. So I kind of feel like there's that mysticism. I definitely feel it, but I didn't learn about it growing up. That felt like quite a hippie thing. You go to mass on a Sunday and that's for like other people.
Well, it's so interesting because, and this is probably just my personal experience, but there's something about the Irish that I know of and have met that I don't know what's going on there, but there is a lot of psychicness and connection.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Do you feel you have gifts?
I mean, I don't know. And again, I think, and actually is it clairsentient?
Yeah, so that you feel.
Yeah. And so that was something that I had never even heard of that term until I listened to the podcast. And I was like, oh, that makes total sense to me. All I knew was clairvoyant. I was like, I'm definitely not seeing things. I wish I was, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But I definitely do think I get like, I have a sense of people really quickly, and I have a read of a room quite quickly. And I think I kind of really connect or don't connect with people. So it's either instant, you're like a lifelong friend, I've known you all my life, or quite a felt, back out of the room vibe. But I don't know whether that's like a gift.
Well, I think it's a fantastic gift because I see that you're really connected to Ireland, it feels. And I love that. It's so beautiful to actually witness it. Do you split your time there? Because I remember during the pandemic, there were points where you're like, I really miss Ireland. I haven't been there.
Yeah. Based in London. So I kind of spent time over and back when I was, initially building up my career in TV, going over and back between the two and never quite saying where I lived. Not that I was hedging my bets, but Ireland always felt like home, and it does. But during the pandemic, it felt like we created our home over here, like our little family became my home. And that was the first time. Up until then, home had felt like a very physical place as opposed to a unit that could go anywhere, I guess. But yeah, we still spend quite a bit of time in Ireland. I'm going back there this weekend, actually. So I just love it. It's so beautiful. And I think the longer I spend away, the more romantic I get about going home. It's like, oh, it's so green. When I'm in a plane, I get a bit misty-eyed. So it's on my board. It's on my hit list. A little cottage by the sea. That would be the dream.
And where at would you choose?
I think it would be in West Cork.
Yes, that I have to agree.
Oh, it's so
It's so
beautiful.
beautiful.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Wow.
And the food is really good. And yeah, it's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And we've spent a lot of time there and it just feels, and actually I wrote quite a bit of the book there. My cousins have a house right by the sea. And so it's kind of a place I go, like I just feel really recharged there. And when we were kids, another aunt of mine had a house down there. So it just like holds a lot of memories for me down that neck of the woods. So that would be the place.
And Roy he's English.
No, he's Irish. He's from Cork.
I had
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah.
Wow. And how does he like the, mix between London and going back to Ireland?
He actually loves it. And sometimes I kind of think I want to like run home and literally give it all up and open a florist by the
Yep.
sea.
Yep.
And he really loves London, really loves
Yeah.
it. He definitely moved for love initially. And we didn't move until we got married. So I was kind of, like I say, straddling the two and kind of hoping that things would take off over here, but we hadn't committed. And then after we got married, we moved over. And so I felt like this wild pressure to make things work. And thankfully they did. And he's just been, just brilliantly supportive. And now I would say he's more at home here than I am.
I love that. That's so beautiful. How long have you guys been together?
We've been together. I'm really bad at dates, but we've been together. We'll be married 8 years this June.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. Oh, so amazing. So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode. I want to get into the book a little because now that I'm done profiling you, because I'm like, she's so the best. Tell us about Joyrider, because your practice has been, through the podcast, and what I'm gathering from the book is the importance of gratitude. And I love that. Tell us more about how that came to be your practice and why it's so important to you.
Truthfully, I tried lots of different things. I think I always felt like I was looking for something, I suppose. I had an eating disorder from the time I was 17, which I speak about for the first time in the book, which has kind of felt like a relief, but also really terrifying to kind of put it out there. So I kind of knew that I needed help, and I kind of approached it from the point of, I was like a project and I needed to be fixed. And so I was looking for, the magic pill, and I was looking for whatever it was that would fix me. And gratitude was something that I kind of came across through The Secret and then through Abraham Hicks and all of those. And then I found like manifestation through that. But for me, it was this thing that I kind of kept coming back to. And because it was on the surface really easy and not shiny necessarily, I kind of took it for granted and I would dip in and out of it. But it then became this thing that I found myself coming back to all of the time, and that I could really feel, a shift when I would practice it. And I don't know whether it's my personality, but I didn't want the idea of commitment on any level. I didn't want a job that required me to be in work 5 days a week. I didn't want anything that felt grown up or committed. And so to do a practice every day felt boring and dull and like something somebody else needed to do. And so having kind of realized that this was a thing and an anchor that really, really helped me, I launched a podcast because I thought, okay, well, work I seem to be able to stick to. So if I turn it into a job, we all know I'm really good at work. So I turned it into a podcast called Thanks a Million. And so I interviewed like loads of amazing people from all walks of life on their big thank you moments and how they use gratitude in their lives. And it kind of was born out of that. The book and the kind of simplicity of it as a practice, but also the profound effect that it can have kind of on your life, on your mood, the ability to kind of empower you to like shift your energy literally from being in a dark hole to being in a less dark hole.
In a brighter hole. Yes.
In a brighter hole. Yeah. So the idea of kind of joyriding is just, it feels hopeful. And I think a lot of the time we're kind of met with all of these self-help and self-care and all of the stuff that we should be doing. And it feels like a job in and of itself. It's free, it's easy, it's within your power to change your life, I suppose. And that feels accessible, but also big.
What I like about your approach to it is it feels like, to me, though you have a practice and you're sharing it with the world, it feels like you're kind of like your career, where you're not pigeonholing yourself. You're coming at it from different ways, different angles. You're giving yourself reflection and thought. And that's what I think feels really inspiring about your approach to it, because a lot of, like you've mentioned, self-help approaches in the past, it's like, if you do it this way, it's going to do this, etc. But I think what we all know from having any type of practice of reflection and gratitude is it doesn't always feel the same when you're doing it.
Yeah.
You have to meet yourself where you're at in those moments and have the different tools to get you there to that space.
I mean, it's so bang on, because I think that's exactly it. It's like the toolkit. I feel like I've kind of foraged around in the world. I've spent a fortune doing all of these different things, and I've kind of found this thing, but it's not, as you say, an exact science. It's about kind of, like you say, meeting yourself where you're at. And self-knowledge is a massive part. It's the first part of the book. Again, we spoke about this at the beginning in relation to kind of need after I had my daughter, but it's that kind of knowing who you are on a deep level, which can be quite confronting to have to sit down and get to know yourself. But also it's, I think, that kind of self-knowledge, when you really know yourself, you know what you need on any given day, and that can change, but you have the kind of framework. And much like my allergy to commitment, I have always been really reticent to embrace routine. I was like, routine is for office bores, and I have created a life where I do not need to do the 9 to 5. It was a very kind of conscious thing for me, a rebellious thing almost. And routine felt like I was selling out or it was boring. Actually, I think routine, and it's so cliched, routine sets you free, but the kind of pandemic, for the first time in my life, I had a routine. I had a set time that I could get up. I had nowhere to be. I've always traveled. I've always run around. And it kind of allowed for me to create this foundation, I suppose, and to build a practice and a little toolkit that I can dip in and out of, depending on how I feel on any given day. And there's just such security in knowing that you can dip in and out of that, because for a lot of people, when you're in a place that feels overwhelming, or you've lost a job, or you've lost a friend, or whatever it might be, those kind of big moments, it's hard to believe that you can get through them. And we all have those challenges, but knowing that I suppose the bad feelings will pass and so will the good ones. And so the idea of embracing joy and really kind of like leaning into that, because it is fleeting and it's not a permanent state. We're not trying to reach kind of in a toxic way for this smiling, gurning, happy positivity, and I know you talk about spiritual bypass a lot, and there is that kind of sense that if we just, you write it on a blackboard and you magic it into your life, and actually a lot of the kind of harder, more boring, the work, I suppose, is what allows for the foundations to be properly laid. And that was something I resisted, but also something now that I really, appreciate so much.
I think it's amazing. And even while you're speaking, it's funny because like I'll get channels and downloads, as you're talking. And so what I can feel when you're saying it is the energetic behind what you're saying and getting to. And what that reads as is it's such a difference between like the spiritual bypass version of manifestation, for instance, which is kind of that. It's like, don't look at the negative, don't look at any of the other stuff, just go to that place. And what I really love about what you're saying and your approach to it is all of that's valid, all of that's part of you. You're experiencing all of that, but also you have the access to also experience this too. And here are the tools to work your way into that. So in fact, it's so funny because when you're speaking about it and like just my channeling and reading of the energetic, gratitude, yes, but it also, what it reads as is just being able to get to your authentic self and having peace. Obviously, there's like the joy and all of the beauty that comes and all of that. But to me, even hearing, like the channeling while you're speaking, it's not just the gratitude piece and that you can reach and feel all of that, but it's actually getting back to what your home frequency is and peace with it.
100%. And it's that ease and peace and acceptance. And I say them like they're easy states to reach. And obviously you've got to work through to that. For me, I describe gratitude as a gateway drug for people. If you feel like this world of wellness is inaccessible, to me, gratitude is a way to pull people in, but ultimately it's connection. And I think that's the through line in everything that I do. It's like connection with yourself, connection with other people. And I didn't really realize that that's what I strive for in everything I do, is to find something in you that speaks to something in me. And I think the only way you really get that is by being completely open and completely authentic.
And what would be an example of something, for instance, and what people can look forward to in the book, a really clear example of how you have been feeling recently, or an experience where you're like, I'm not at my home frequency, let's say, or I am in a lower spot. I'm, feeling all of this stuff, how you did switch that around.
So it's hard. A lot of the time for me, and we've referenced spiritual bypass, and I think so many people think, that what you're reaching for is like happy, 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 happy.
Joy, like pure
Exactly.
joy, even though that's the title, Joyrider, but I think you and I are talking about the same thing.
100%. It's kind of with a nod, there's a wink in the title. And also the Joyrider kind of alludes to the ride and the wild ride, And so my experience was that I was trying to shut down those so-called negative feelings. My sense was that if I allowed myself to feel upset about something or overwhelmed, or if I really embraced my wild sensitivity, that I would literally drown under the weight of it and never come back. So that sensitivity that I felt so deeply, I just started to shut down. Then I realized as time went on, I would be at a wedding. I would get an amazing job. I would get like the things that were on my list, the things that technically I had manifested into my world. I couldn't feel anything from those either. And I realized that in dialing down those so-called negative emotions, that I had kind of lost the capacity to feel any of the good stuff as well. And so I was kind of in this like numb, safe, but really numb state all of the time. And so I suppose even in the aftermath of having Marnie and being in the kind of wild, like the hormones, it's been a really largely positive experience, but it's also, I'm a new mother for the second time. There are bittersweet feelings that I didn't have similar intimate feelings with Ruby when she was first born. There's guilt attached. There's like big emotions that feel really hard to hold and to bear. And I go from sitting there weeping and feeling such like deep, wild love to going, oh my God, this is driving me mental. I can't have two kids. Why is he doing this? What is that noise? La, la. And so instead of turning on myself, I try now to just allow for those fluctuations in this moment and accept that actually I'm not perfect. I am very human, and actually honoring the fact that it is messy. And I think that's the big thing. It's the like wild messiness of life and the unpredictability and the uncertainty, and trying to really embrace and lean into that, not just as like a rocky patch, but that's actually the good stuff, really.
I love it. And what it shines light on is exactly what we've been talking about, embracing all of it and feeling grateful for all of it.
Yeah.
I have that most nights because I co-sleep with Teddy. Completely accidental that happened, but it's actually been the greatest gift on the planet. And I'll just lie there in bed thinking about the gazillion ways I didn't show up consciously, mostly to Max.
Yeah, they always get the raw end of the deal,
I
don't they?
know. It's so tough. I'm really working on it. But I sit there and I'm just like, I'm so grateful for all of it. Even like the shame I feel for this, to the gratitude to this, and to the joy here. And I'm just grateful for all of it. And I think that that's what you're highlighting. And that's a really, really important and beautiful relationship and practice.
And it's so true. And I think it is, you know, there's self-compassion at the heart of all of that. And whether that's the kind of softness of your body after having a baby that maybe feels a bit alien, but it's like, it's okay. I love it in her. I can love it in myself. It's fine. It's fleeting, whatever it might be. I do think that kind of self-compassion is at the heart of that, and kind of looking at yourself like inner child, recognizing the little you. And I think that's what a baby does. You're like, oh man, that was me. And you have this connection. It can be really difficult to remember it in a felt sense, or to kind of make comparisons even in your whatever your perception is of a past experience. But I think that kind of sense of holding yourself a little bit like you hold your baby, and being able to give yourself a bit of the mad love that you can give to them. You don't need to have a baby to do that. You can mother yourself at whatever state you are. And I know you talk about this a lot with reparenting, and that's been such a profound practice for me. You know, and I talk about it again in the book about being able to love yourself back to life, and the things that you didn't get maybe, or that you feel you were lacking in, you're able to give to yourself, you know, that you can give yourself what you need, you know, once you recognize what you need.
I completely agree. I just think that's so, so special. And it's wild as I'm even thinking about truly your body of work. And even as a Capricorn, you know, but you have the Gemini, you have the Leo, and obviously so much more going on there. What you're giving licensing to as an expander is that you can have dreams to do so many different things, and that it's possible. Like, I'm even thinking about your jewelry line. Freckle is incredible. It's so cool, everything that you've got going on. And I find myself pigeonholing myself a lot, because I'm like, do one thing, do it really well, and then after that, do whatever you want. I mean, there were parts of me when I was young where I was like, I want a clothing line, you know, and it just seems like you've really opened up and allowed so many of your dreams to come to fruition. And it's probably just truly the beginning.
But do you know what? And I do think that you've been a massive part of that, because I feel like I had a very similar experience. I worked in fashion, and then I was like, okay, I want to be in TV. So I kind of shunned any love I had for fashion, because I was like, I need to be taken seriously in TV, and I want to do this really well, and I'm going to focus on this. And creatively, I kind of really missed. And I was exactly the same. I wanted to have my own fashion line. And there were loads of things that I wanted to do. And I would look around and I kind of stopped myself from doing it because I thought, I'm not going to be the very best at that if I'm not pouring everything into that. And then I would see other people do things and think, I can't believe they did that. Almost, how dare they do that? They do this as well. How do they do it? And then I thought, I need to, honestly, this kind of perfectionism, this want to do everything perfectly was so debilitating. It completely robbed me of joy. And I'd be like, I can't start. I'd have all of these ideas and then all of these reasons not to do them. And then I have kind of just tried to push myself to go, you know what, as you would say, jump off the cliff, just fucking do it. Just start somewhere. You do not need to arrive fully formed. You'll fall. It might not work out. You can learn. And I have to sometimes learn a bit more publicly or make my mistakes a bit more publicly. But I also feel really excited about doing that. And I did a chat show last year and I felt like wildly vulnerable doing it. The book probably is the most vulnerable I've ever felt because I've kind of shared bits of myself that I've, hidden behind my jazz hands mask as a performer. But I kind of do feel quite passionate about giving permission to people to do whatever you want. You don't need to pigeonhole yourself. You're allowed to do whatever it is that lights you up, and some of it might work and some of it might not, but you'll never regret it. Or even if you do, you'll learn something from it. And I think the worst place to be is sitting there looking around at all of the things that you thought you could have done that you never did because you were too afraid to do them. So I kind of do feel like just go for it.
Yes. I love that. That's such permission. And it's amazing. For you, I'm thinking about me. And I'm like, if I had a jewelry line and I had to go through a book launch right now, you had the chat show, you also had, the remodeling show where it's like you could basically see the whole thing before you do it. How do you organize your life to also be present for your family? And I think this is a really pertinent question for anybody. How do you categorize or have structure, have some sort of a schedule, also being pretty turned off by commitment? Like, how do you do that? Because I'm even thinking through my day and I wouldn't even totally know how to formulate it, where it's like, I know I have to promote this thing, I have decisions to make on that thing, et cetera. Like, how do you do it?
Well, the decision thing is quite difficult for me. When I'm overwhelmed, I'm like, I can't do anything. So I kind of, I have help and I have management who'll go, you need to turn up here, or you need to do that there. Roy, my husband, is amazing at kind of holding a lot of stuff. He's a really big part of that for me, which is really hard to admit because I go straight to, oh my God, what if he dies? But I think it's trying to not expect too much. I have a friend and I watch her parent and she has 3 kids and she's like a massive, massive expander for me. She talks about these like terrific 10 minutes, okay, and she gives them to her kids. I have started to do this with Ruby where I'm like, and 10 minutes does not sound like a lot of time. But also, it's so easy for a day to pass where you're up here organizing stuff and you're never on a level and fully engaged and present. Try to do a meditation practice and you're like, yeah, 10 minutes a day, of course I'll do it. And then most people don't commit to 10 minutes a day. So I have started doing this thing where I'm like, okay, Rubes, what do you want to do? What's your 10 minutes a day? I'll kind of get, started by saying we could like tumble in your bedroom, or we can paint, or we can dance, or we can whatever. And so you kind of start her off. And now she looks forward. She's like, what's our 10 minutes of fun today? So she'll anticipate and look forward. And I'll know, I'm like, Roy, you're on the baby. I'm wherever I am doing this like 10 minutes of full focus and engagement and like fun. And it's been really, really lovely and really important for her as well, and for me, because sometimes it does feel like with so much going on, you can be doing the things, you can do the school run, but your head is somewhere else, or you're picking up a call on the way home. So to have those little pockets where you're etched out and that are kind of non-negotiable, I think is really important. And weekends are definitely that. They're kind of a no-go zone. So yeah, it's like, I don't think that I've got it sorted, but I'm trying, and I'm trying to be more conscious.
I think that's a fantastic tip. Even like the right parenting, they talk about that a lot, where it's fostering so much independence. But when you have that one-on-one, like it's that focus of that undivided. And I think that that's so cool that you've carved out together, like the fun version of it. Whatever is going to light her up. I think that's so beautiful and really attainable.
Really attainable, and I think that's the thing. And it's her anticipation of it and her thinking, what am I going to do? So there's a kind of space in her mind where we're together as well, you know. And so I look forward to it and she looks forward to it. But the other tip, and this is also from the same friend, she does an in charge day. So she gets her kids, and they're a bit older than mine, but she gives her kid full permission. So they're like, this is your in charge day. And I mean, this might be once a year or once every 6 months. The kid gets to do literally whatever they want. The whole family rows in. It's amazing. Her eldest son did this, like, oh, we'll go for a walk. We'll go for a walk in the woods, and I want to climb trees, and I want to do a picnic, and I want to do this and that. And she said it honestly, it was like, it sounded like a fake thing. It was not real life. Her daughter, she's like, you're in charge day, Olympia. What do you want to do? She's like, I want to eat ice cream and watch YouTube videos. And then I want to have I want to go and bathe in sprinkles. She was like she leaned it. It was a filthy, obnoxious day of like overloaded children's joy. Okay. But sugar laden joy. She was like, cool, it's your in charge day. And so they all rode in behind her. She fell asleep from a sugar crash. She woke up the following morning. She's like, I think I wasted my in charge day tomorrow. And she's like, next time we're going to go rock climbing.
I love it.
Totally.
Well, it also like gives her the autonomy to experience all of the stuff that one would warn against, so that she really, really understands her own feelings with it and relationship with it.
Yeah, so it's attainable, isn't it? It's those things. And I'm like constantly looking for expanders. They'll go, oh yeah, that works well.
I love it. Those are two incredible tips. That's fantastic. Well, tell us about your jewelry line and anything else we should know about that you're up to right now, because there's a lot. It's amazing.
So yeah, my jewelry line, again, I think it was born out of lockdown, and jewelry has always been something that I've kind of been obsessed about. I remember thinking, we need clothes. Like, it's kind of mostly unacceptable, maybe not in Topanga, but mostly unacceptable to be cruising around nude. Whereas jewelry feels like that kind of thing. It's purely about connection. It's something you don't need. It's luxury. You love it. You connect to something. And so it was born out of that. And so it's essentially like a wardrobe of base pieces and charms that you can choose depending on what you're into. And it's just been really a gorgeous project to work on. I worked as a stylist before, so to be able to do that kind of creative piece again has been so lovely. It's called Freckle, spelt FRKL. And yeah, it's pretty new. So we're like launched at the end of October. But like a real learning for me. And I studied business in university. And so I feel like this is kind of allowing me to slightly flex that muscle and really get into the detail. Because sometimes TV can feel like I'm not in control of any of that. So this is something that I can build and that I can, Ruby can get involved in, and they come down to the shoots. And it's been a really lovely thing to work on, and people seem to love it.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, what I love about it is that you can kind of build out whatever you want. You have, like you're saying, base pieces, and it's all the variant style, cool stuff. And then you can pick the charms you want to go with it. And so when this came to you, did it come to you as an opportunity, or did you dream it up first and then broach, like a collaboration or something?
So I wanted to do something for ages. And this kind of circles back to that idea of, oh, I'm not ready, or I need to get to this amount of followers in order to do something. And I need to wait for this to happen in order to do that. And all of these kind of conditions. And then I would look around at people and go, oh my God, they've created something amazing. And I realized that I just had to kind of start somewhere. But again, I felt really overwhelmed. I'm really good at the creative side of things. I'm good at ideas. I'm very good at curation. I can kind of edit things down. But the back end stuff, the kind of day to day, the operations, I don't have time for it. I don't have interest in it. And so it was always, how do I create this without that piece? And a friend of ours, like serial entrepreneur, and we were having dinner together one evening and I said, I'd really love to do a jewellery line. He was like, I can help. And so it was just one of those kind of, ordinarily I would say, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, that's never gonna happen.
I'm like that too. Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, great idea. But actually, I'm really busy next week and next year. And then nothing happens. And actually, he kind of pushed things along. And it was really interesting. And it was a real big learning for me because there were lots of points over the course of that journey where I was like, this is definitely not going to happen. I would put all of the energy, all the momentum, and then I'd be like, next, on to something else. And because we were in it together, he was continuing pushing it on, and then we would tag team in our different roles. So it's all felt really, really effortless and really kismet, as you would say. So it has felt, like a really good partnership, actually. So it's been an amazing experience, and I've got big plans.
Oh, fantastic. That's what I was curious. I'm like, where's this going? So that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's been lovely. And again, like I say, that kind of sense of having expanders in loads of areas, I was like, if TV is the only thing that I want to do, why do I keep getting these little peaks of, So, it's been lovely to kind of follow that. And then I have a newsletter as well, which I do, which is kind of more of a personal thing. It's like my journal, things that I love and practices that I do. It's kind of much more in the wellness space, much more in line with the book. So it kind of feels sometimes like there's all of these different tabs open, which is kind of what my brain feels like. But actually now at this point, for the first time, maybe there's a kind of sense of them being connected, and literally connection being the through line for me.
I love it. Where can we find everything, especially the pre-order for the book? Because it's still not out, right? It's pre-order only.
Yes, it's out on the 12th of May, though. So I think when this comes out, it will be out.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay,
so
great.
12th of May. And so it'll be out Amazon. Probably go to my Instagram and you'll find literally everything and anything that we've spoken about. So it's Angela Scanlon on Instagram. And then my podcast is Thanks a Million. So if you're like swiveling around looking for some fabulous people, you must come on my podcast. I would absolutely love.
I can't wait. I'm excited to chat about all the things.
Yes.
Well, I'm so grateful, Angela. You're up to such cool things. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing today.
Thank you so much. And I genuinely mean it. So much of what has come out of your work has brought me to here. So it's not insignificant me chatting to you here. It feels like a real lovely full circle moment. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.